Hello, here I am again, Hans Johansson, and I've got some very good news. What do you know? Quantum mechanics has been awarded this year's Nobel Prize. And it's no little thing at all. Actually, it's an old paper. The Nobel Prize is long due, almost 40 years. And what it shows is that microscopic quantum effects actually sort of travel up to the level where we are, the macroscopic level. Why is that important? Why? The thing is, usually quantum mechanical effects are considered in general to be limited to the very small things, the microscopic level. Tunneling, which this paper is particular about, is happening at the level of 1 electron or thereabouts. 1 electron only, and 1 electron sort of travels through solid material and appearing on the other side. That is going from one side to another of an absolutely solid object. This is called tunneling. What Clarke et al. Been looking at is that this is actually happening on a much larger scale as well. How much larger? Well, listen now, 1 million times larger. Can you imagine? We are way up into the macroscopic level, although it's still kind of small, no doubt. But the important thing is that the barrier between the extremely small and the large things happening around ourselves is actually dimmed now. One can no longer say, and that is possibly the most common argument, let's call that A. One can no longer say that, quantum mechanical effects, that is just limited to the very, very small, has nothing to do with the larger level, where, well, I assume the person would say classical physics holds. Not at all. The B argument is often involving something called decoherence, and that's the idea that sort of all these unnatural and against the laws of nature, or let me say the classical laws of nature, those things just cease to exist because of something called decoherence, which is roughly the idea that all small things have their world and the bigger things have their particular world. And statistics takes all the difference away. It doesn't really. It is actually that bad. I wouldn't call it bad, but let's use that from their perspective, the classical physicist thinking people, the Newtonians, if you like. They would say that the proposal, for instance, in a book that I highly recommend, Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, in that they have something called the improbability machine. That is forced by the high improbabilities in the universe. What could an improbabilities be? Well, for instance, that the Eiffel Tower would turn up at my backyard. The argument A and B being that of decoherence, would say it can never happen. The laws of physics, the eternal, fantastic, absolute, instated in heaven laws of physics hold. So the Eiffel Tower can not even in a single chance in the very most improbable situation turn up in my backyard. And that is wrong. You see now, Douglas Adams was, him unbeknownst, absolutely correct. Those things can happen. They are highly unlikely, but highly unlikely is good enough to shatter the immutable laws of classical physics, because they cannot have an exception at all, no matter how small. Let me repeat that, it's so important. No matter how small the exception is, it cannot be there, because then all the absoluteness shatters and you have a mere approximation. And no longer you have this beautiful view that Laplace pointed out and drew for Napoleon, where the starry heavens were regulated by immutable eternal laws. It has a sort of beauty to it, no doubt, and we all have fallen for that, with all those other fruits that brings in its view, which is determinism, reductionism, and utter materialism, things that are not so very tasty, unpleasant side effects, if you like. Those unpleasant side effects are actually a result of Newtonian physics. And that started more or less, I'm exaggerating a bit here, 1689 with Isaac Newton's Principia. So the immutable laws of the universe are actually not that old. And the prehistory is definitely the not so unmutable laws of Greek physics, of Aristotle. These laws of nature could change. So the immutability that we all live in, the determinism, the reductionism, are all new things. At least no more than 300 years, a bit more. Those all things, all this heavy set foundation, this stern, it feels like having like Plattengebäude of Deutsch, how to say, big concrete house that is on top of your shoulders, because it bears you down. It's in the long end extremely depressing with determinism, because there's no free will. So what is the point with walking around and making choices? I'd say very little. We've been tampering with these side effects of Newtonian physics way too long. So the Nobel Prize that will be handed out on the 10th of December is a very important step in healing ourselves. No longer being dependent on unwanted, even from Newton's perspective, unwanted side effects that not even he wanted. We have now a more comprehensive and more correct view of reality, a proven view of reality, which is not determinism, where there is free will, where things can happen that are quite miraculous. I think this brings back the amazement of nature, and it takes away that machinery-like thinking that everyone thinks is so absolutely cut in stone. It's cut in paper maybe, and that paper has since, at least in the development of quantum mechanics in the 1920s, molded, fragmented and dissolved. It's gone. It's completely gone. It will be used in calculation only, but it will no longer serve as a model of reality, although most people uphold it. But hey, go figure. Most people in the Roman Empire believed in the old gods. Possibly they were wrong. We've been believing in the immutable laws of physics. We are wrong. It's time to give those things a rest. And they were not even wanted from the beginning. But what they do is cause great harm to the thinking system. it actually corrupts it, because it's absolutely wrong. So a free-fall hooray for quantum mechanics and the very celebrative day of 10th of December. Nothing could bring more joy than to dissolve all these unwanted side effects. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Cheers!